Welcome. This episode contains a lot of information, and we figured some viewers might be interested in jumping to their topic of interest. So we've divided this up into chapters or parts. The description of this video has links that will take you to a specific topic, and we're also listing those timestamps here. Okay, here we go. Welcome back to BBB Adventures, and today's episode is about Loop the Lake, and we're going to share some details, some stats about that now that it's over, and we're going to talk about these great bikes that we rode. For those of you who are new to BBB Adventures, my name's Brentley, and my wife Mary Beth and I are bicycle tourists. Let me give you a little bit of background. We lived in Taiwan. When we're in Taiwan, we did long distance touring on some road bikes where we would cycle around the island. And then in 2022, after we moved back from Taiwan to the United States, we rode two Priority Apollo bicycles across the country. That was called the Apollo mission. We just rode 3,500 miles across the United States
on our Priority Apollo bikes.
All of that stuff is documented on BBB Adventures. If you go back in the archives, you can watch those adventures. They're pretty fun. But today, I wanna talk a little bit about Loop the Lake. For those of you who followed Loop the Lake, we just finished releasing the last episode last week. We really appreciate those of you who followed along and commented, and it's been really fun to engage with everyone. Oh, you're probably wondering, and if you have been with the channel a long time, you may have noticed something different about my appearance. If you haven't, then you're not paying very good attention, because yeah, I'm I feel like a 16-year-old kid. I've got braces. It's a long story why a person that's going to turn 60 years old this year got braces, but really it's in an effort to retain my God-given teeth as long as possible. Long story, you don't need to know about it. Just know that for the next 12 months, maybe longer, I'm going to talk funny and I'm going to have a really pretty smile. Okay, Loop the Lake. All right, let me share some stats about Loop the Lake. Got them right here in my pocket. Okay, so Loop the Lake, if you haven't watched it, you should, but we started southwest of Chicago and we worked our way through the city and clockwise around Lake Michigan and ended up in the same place we started. That was a total of 1,120 miles, 22,077 feet of climb, and 27 calendar days, 23 of which we were on the bikes riding. The rest were rest days. So that works out to 48.7 miles per day on average, 959 feet of climb on average, and our average speed was 9.8 miles an hour. So that may seem kind of slow, but that's not that different of what our normal pace is while touring. The bikes are heavy. We take our time. It's not a race for us. It's riding our bikes. And the Apollo mission, I think we averaged 11, a little bit faster than that. But yeah, those are some of the stats. The other stats I wanted to share with you is people ask about, well, what does it cost to bike tour? So we figured it all out. So we tracked our expenses during this trip, and I'm going to share those with you. Yours can be vastly different if you tour a different way, and it'll make sense as we go through this. But you don't have to spend what we spent. But these costs I'm going to share with you were costs that we incurred during the ride. Did not count any of the equipment that we bought. It does not count travel to the start point, travel home. It includes none of that. This is basically what we spent from the time we got on the bike to start till the time we got off when we were finished 27 days later, okay? So that total cost was $4,384. And the way that breaks down is we spent $1,939.36 eating out. Embedded in that is probably a few beers, because I didn't break down a bill from a restaurant if it had a couple of beers on it and meals. But that's what we spent at restaurants. We spent $585.12 on alcohol. at bars and breweries mostly. For those of you who watched Loop the Lake, that probably should not surprise you. We spent $555.70 on groceries, where we stopped to buy groceries. A lot of times it was Dollar General, but because those are very readily available on tours like this, but sometimes at other grocery stores. And then between hotels, campground fees, this includes the ferry to go to Mackinac Island and back to the mainland. That total was $1,272.59. And then we spent $31.13 on miscellaneous things like rocks and gifts and other stuff. So anyway, that totals just over almost $4,400. So again, you don't have to spend that if you want to bike tour a different way. There's cheaper camping options. You don't have to stay in a hotel. You don't have to eat out as much as we did. And you certainly don't have to drink as much beer as we did. But that's what it cost us. One more stat I want to share with you about Loop the Lake is about the bikes and their weight. And so we're going to go over this here in a few minutes. But the bikes as they sit here right now, which is configured to be touring bikes, my bike weighs 35 pounds and Mary Beth's bike weighs 32 pounds. That includes the click stand and that spare tube. But that's basically the way these bikes are configured. These bikes start out at about 25 and a half pounds stock. So we've added roughly 10 pounds worth of stuff. Between the racks and the Redshift pedals and the other things I'm going to go over, that adds about 10 pounds per bike. Now I'm also going to go over what each one of our panniers weighed, and then you'll get a total of each bike. Starting with my Gemini, the right rear pannier weighs 14.55 pounds. The left rear pannier weighs 13.45 pounds. The right front pannier weighs 6.7, and the front left also weighs 6.7 pounds. Disco's basket comes in at 2.4 pounds without him in it. So if we total all that baggage on my bike, it comes to 44 pounds. Moving to Mary Beth's bike, her right rear pannier is 8.85 pounds and the left rear is 11.55 pounds. The small bucket on her right front fork, which primarily held coffee and tea, came in at 0.4 pounds, while the food bag on her left front fork is 2.95 pounds. There's also a food bag on the top of her rear rack, which weighed 4.9 pounds, and finally, her handlebar bag was a hefty 5.95 pounds. So that total adds up to 34.6 pounds of baggage on MB's bike. Now, if you add Disco and a couple of full water bottles and my bike, the total touring weight for me was 82 pounds. For Mary Beth, that number comes in at about 70 pounds. So that's how much the bikes weighed. And if you want to know what we took, we actually did a video before Loop the Lake where we talked about everything we were taking. So if you want to see where all that weight comes from, you can go back and watch that video. We'll put a link in the description. These are, if you don't know, these bikes have electronic shifting. And when electronic shifting first came out in a traditional drivetrain, I had no interest in it. I just didn't want to mess with the battery. I always figured I would go out to ride my bike and the battery would be dead. So I was a little skeptical when I found out these bikes have electronic shifting. Well, we tracked the shifting and the battery performance, and I'm going to share that graph with you now. And this is the graph of what that looks like, and it's you can see my battery, you can see Mary Beth's battery, and how it depleted over time. And Mary Beth started out at 100%, mine only started out at 96%, but you can see that they went down into the mid 40% after all of that touring. And let me tell you what, we are shifters. We shift constantly. Shift, shift, shift. I like, probably me more than Mary Beth, but I like to shift to find just the perfect gear for the perfect situation that I'm in. And luckily, these bikes have lots of gears to choose from that have a broad range, and so I ended up shifting. So the point is, I shifted a lot. I have no idea how many times I shifted, but I shifted a lot. And after that, everyday riding, those batteries still had, like 42% battery. So battery life is not a big deal. We didn't have to charge them the whole time. And I think we've only charged them once since then, and we've been riding them. So yeah, battery performance is impressive. Okay, that is pretty much all the stats about Luke the Lake. If you have any questions that I didn't cover about it, yeah, leave us a comment and I'll do my best to answer it. Okay, now it's time to talk about the bikes. These are spectacular bikes. Let's start out by talking about the frame. This geometry is a gravel bike geometry. The geometry is very similar to the Apollo, and it's likely similar to other gravel bikes that are on the market. It's the frame geometry is sort of halfway between an aggressive road bike and a full-on mountain bike, and so you get a comfortable riding position, and you get some agility, you get performance. It's really, and that's one of the reasons we like starting with a gravel bike as a base for a touring bike, because this geometry really works for us. We find it comfortable. We ride these all day, and the geometry works for us. We don't really have any hot spots, no pain, base because of the geometry. So we like the nimbleness. We like this bike geometry a lot. These bikes happen to be titanium, but they do make an aluminum version, but pretty much identical frame geometry. The other thing these bikes have is they have the Adventure fork. So this is the Adventure fork, and it has a whole bunch of braze-on attachment points. By the way, so does the frame. It's got them up here, it's got them under here, it's got them here, it's got them here, it's got them over there, it's got them down here. It has braze-ons everywhere, which really also helps make it a great starting point for you to customize into your adventure bike. Okay, moving on to some of the other components that come standard with the bike. It's got these TRP high wire full hydraulic disc brakes. These are fantastic brakes. They're very capable brakes. We were fully loaded. We did go down some hills. Yeah, I never had any issue. I never worried about the brakes on the bike. The wheels that come standard are the KOM, the WTB KOM I-23 wheels. These wheel sets are strong. I mean, you saw the weight that we were putting on these, and we didn't have any broken spokes. We didn't have any issues with these wheels. They stayed true. They stayed stable. These are strong, light but strong wheels. And as a testament to how strong these are, even when you hit a pothole on a trail that's enough to basically almost eject your dog out of the basket and you lose your wallet, no damage. No damage at all. It stayed true, no broken anything. So really happy with the wheels. The tires that come standard are WTB Vulpine gravel bike tires, and we were actually quite pleased with these tires. We got no flats until, and we don't run tubeless, but we got no flats until my bike rear tire was worn down quite a bit. Now they did wear. I got about 1,200 miles out of my rear tire, but it was highly loaded. I don't know that it's a fair test of this tire. It was highly loaded, but so I would have liked to have gotten more than 1,200 miles out of it. But again, I think if you were just riding this more unloaded, you would do better. I am actually trying some Schwably GR1 somethings. I'm actually trying, the Schwably G1R tire. It was quite expensive, but I'm going to test this. But you can see the tire is very similar. The tread's very similar. The tread pattern, the design of the tire is very similar to these WTB tires. So I'm trying those out based on the recommendation of one of our viewers. This saddle, which is a WTB Volt saddle, you think you're going to buy a bike and I'll probably change the saddle. But this has been our experience with these Priority bikes. The same thing happened on the Apollo. We bought the Apollos. We thought we would change the saddle, but we rode them. It's like, this saddle's pretty good. And then we rode all the way across the country, and the Apollos, which are still back over there somewhere, still have the stock saddle. Same thing here. We find these saddles that came in these bikes to be extremely comfortable, and we did not feel the need to upgrade them or replace them. So that's been our experience anyway, but we really like the saddle. All right. Now let's talk about the true differentiator of this bicycle, and that's the drivetrain. It's the pinion smart shift combined with the Gates carbon drive belt. This is the heart of this bicycle, and it really does differentiate it from everything else on the market that I would use as a starting point for a touring bike. It's got a 600% gear range, and it is zero maintenance. That zero maintenance thing is huge, because that whole time on Loop the Lake, and that actually, back to the Apollo mission, on the Apollo, because it has also a very low maintenance drivetrain, we didn't do anything to these bikes. We just rode them every day. They never failed us. We never had any issues. The electric shifting is awesome. You can shift. I mean, I don't have words to describe how much I like this drivetrain. The 600% gear range, the other cool thing about it is that the increment between every gear is basically the same increment in terms of the gearing change. So it's not like a traditional, derailleur-based drivetrain where, when you go to the big ring and the little ring, there's some gears that are basically exactly the same, and I was always searching, well, I got to go to the big ring now or the little ring, and I got to go back to this, and I'm constantly screwing around trying to find the right gear. Now you could eventually find one that was pretty close, but it was too many gears were too close together. These gears are all very unique, so when you change gear, you feel it. And it's much easier, at least for me, it's much easier to find the right gear given whatever situation that you're trying to navigate. So the shifting is smooth. We really did find, however, that you can't shift under load. I really thought maybe you would be able to. And it's a little bit better than on the Apollo about shifting under load, but we got to the point where we just didn't do it. We would just pause, shift, and start riding again. So we treat these the same as we did the Apollo with the Shimano Alpine 11 rear hub, in that we back off to shift. But we found the shifting to be smooth. These drivetrains are also awesome because if you have to make a sudden stop and you're in a pretty high gear, you get to just shift into first gear or lower gear before you take off. You don't have to be pedaling to get to the gear change. So there's just lots of really cool things about this drivetrain. Probably my biggest and only complaint about this bicycle is how much noise it makes when you coast, because I really, really loved the Apollo. Because the Apollo, when you coast, there's no pawl in the back to make noise. And these are quite loud, these rear hubs. They're nice hubs, but they're loud. And we got used to it. At first I was like, oh, this is just gonna annoy me to death. But we got used to it. But it really is my only complaint. I understand there are hubs that you can buy, they're quiet, but I don't want to spend the extra money. So that's really, that's it for the stock bike. Okay, for rear racks, we put on the Axiom Streamline DLX rack. These are the same racks we had in the Apollos. They hold our panniers great. They hold a lot of weight. We've never had any issue with them, and I thought, well, I'm just going to keep using them because they're great. So we both have those. Mary Beth on her front fork runs a Topeak VersaCage system that allows her to attach various things up here. I have a Tubistara lowrider front rack. Now, I just put this on, so to be completely upfront, I didn't actually run this on Loop the Lake. I had a Topeak rack back here, but I hated it because the way it mounted to the fork, it interfered with the through shaft. So when you had to change a
flat, you had to take the rack loose and whatever. So I just put this on. And this one became highly recommended. So I'm sure it'll be fine. But I do have a front rack that I use for the panniers. We bought these titanium bottle cages from Priority because, titanium, what are you going to put, plastic bottle cages on your nice titanium bike? No. You're going to put titanium. So we got titanium water bottle cages. We got the 174 Hudson saddlebags we bought up from Priority. Those are quite nice. We both have top bar bags that actually bolt on to the braze-ons. That's really nice. If you've got the top bar bag that has the thing that goes around the head tube, that sucks. These bolt-on ones are awesome. We both have slap bags that we use for various things. These we actually took on the Apollo mission. These have actually held up really, really nicely. Let's see. The other things that we did from the standard is we put these Redshift pedals on. And if you haven't seen those, these are awesome. They're heavy, but they are awesome. Now I have the kind that has SPD clips on one side and they're flat pedals on the other. Mary Beth has just standard flat pedals. She doesn't clip in. But these are awesome if you can stand the weight. They're heavy. We also have Redshift seat posts that give you a little bouncy bounce. And I put on a Redshift bouncy stem, mostly to try to help this go. He bounces around a lot. So I was hoping that would help sort of even out his ride. And I think it does. I need to change the elastomers in here. If you guys are familiar with these Redshifts, you can change the elastomer both on the seat post and the stem. So you get a different spring rate. So I can make this a little more bouncy, take a little bit more bouncy out. So then Mary Beth runs this Iberia front bag that clips on here. These are the ones we've had since the Apollo mission. And they did break, but I did repair them and they're holding up. I think that's it in terms of making these the touring bikes that work for the way we tour. Oh, one more thing. The click stand. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with click stands or if you saw this. Several of you asked about it during Loop the Lake, but this is basically a kickstand that you lean the bike up. It works great for even when the bikes are fully loaded. It has these basic elastomer bands that you use to basically lock the brakes so the bike doesn't move. And then this thing works like a tent stake. And so you just do that and you put it on the top tube and yeah, they work great. Another thing that we did to make them touring bikes is we added these front fenders. These are the front fenders that we had in the Apollos. We actually got them from Priority. We like those plastic front fenders. And then if you're familiar with, if you've been around BBB Adventurers for a while, you know that I fabricated some custom rear fenders for the Apollos. I ran out of time with these Geminis and I haven't done it yet, but I still think I will because I do like having a rear fender. So fenders are a super personal thing. A lot of people are fender haters, but I like the fender. Keeps the sand and water out of my face. One thing I've heard when I've talked to people about this bike who know a little bit about this low maintenance drivetrain is they're afraid that the bike's too heavy and that the transmission is what's making it heavy. And yeah, it is. It's slightly heavier than a traditional chain drivetrain, but it's really not that significant. Let me share some. I looked up some specs. So this bike weighs, the aluminum Gemini weighs 26.5 pounds, okay, with that transmission. The titanium weighs 25.5 pounds. So the titanium's about 0.5 pound lighter. The Checkpoint AL5 is 22 pounds. The Canyon Grizzle 6 Raw is 24 pounds. And the Specialized Diverge 4 Sport Alloy is 23.7 pounds. So, yeah, it's a little bit heavier, but it's not. To me, it's not significant. Okay, it's a pound or two heavier, and the advantage of this low maintenance and never having to lube the chain or deal with a derailleur that's not shifting right, and the superiority of the gearing on this thing way outweigh that weight penalty that you're paying to have this. And if you're worried about a couple of pounds, I don't care who you are. I'm guessing you could probably change something about your diet or cut back in a couple more beers and get rid of 2 pounds. So I wouldn't let a couple of pounds and the whole theory that this is too heavy of a bike. It's not true. This bike is very competitive in its weight with other bikes in its class, but it is so far superior in terms of this drivetrain that it's a non-issue. Okay, that gets you up to speed on what these bikes are and what we rode on Loop the Lake. So we've talked about Loop the Lake and what that was about, and we've talked about how we set these bikes up for that ride. Now I'm going to get Mary Beth to sit down with me, and we're gonna do the actual review of these bikes in terms of how do we review their performance, how do we feel about riding them, what did we like, what we didn't like, whatever. So we're gonna bring Mary Beth on the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Mary Beth. Hey, Mary Beth, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure. Glad to be here.
Yeah, well, we understand that you've completed a big bike adventure.
I did.
Tell us about that.
I rode my bicycle with the lovely Brentley Cooper all the way around Lake Michigan.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was it hard?
No, it wasn't.
Why not?
Because we were riding these awesome Priority Geminis.
Yeah. That actually is not, that may sound contrived, but it's really true. These bikes really help make it easy.
I believe they did.
Yeah. We should probably start by just talking about how we thought the bikes handled. We rode them on a lot of different surfaces. We rode them on gravel, crushed limestone, packed crushed limestone, various asphalts of various conditions. We didn't really do any single track on this trip, but the bikes, even during transitions from one road surface to another, were super stable. I think it has to do with the 40 millimeter tires, the frame geometry, our riding position, the relatively low and center of gravity of the base bike, because that's the one thing I like about where that pinion gearbox is it's kind of heavy, and it's a heavy component in the bike, and it's low in the center, and yeah, you put a bunch of bags on it that messes up that, but you're basically starting with a bike that has a very stable geometry. Anyway, so I found the riding to be very secure, very stable.
I did too.
And responsive. There were a few times where we had to make a sudden movement, and even with the fully loaded bikes, it wasn't like unstable or squirrely. Or how about going downhill? Did you find it?
Oh, going down the hill on the Gemini was way different than the Apollo, and I don't know what the reason was. I can't explain it, but it was very stable going downhill. When we first started out on the Apollo mission in Oregon, we had to do some weight manipulation.
Yeah, we had to rebalance front to back.
But I never encountered that, and I did have things on my front fork this trip as well. But it was very stable. I think that the weight of the pinion gearbox probably helped a lot. Balances it.
Yeah.
I think we should talk about the gear ratio and its climbing ability. I was amazed at the grades of climb that I was able to accomplish without getting off the bike and walking. I don't believe that I was in any better condition muscle-wise for this trip than I was for the Apollo mission. But on the Apollo mission, I walked up a lot of hills.
She did. Anything over about 6 or 7%, and if it was very long, she was walking.
Yeah, the 9% and up, I would say.
Yep.
9% and up, I would say. I was walking. And I climbed some hills that were steeper than that.
Yeah, there was one day as we were going from Traverse City to
Empire,
that we hit some pretty long, pretty steep, like 10, 11%, pretty long pulls, pretty long climbs.
And I would be happy to go back and do it again, because it didn't break me. It didn't, it was.
Well, you didn't walk.
I didn't walk.
You didn't walk one time.
And for many of them, I still had another gear left.
Yeah.
Which.
Low gear in these bad boys is low. I tell people you could climb a tree with it. Of course, that's not true, but it's low.
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever got into high gear either. We just didn't go that fast.
No, I didn't go that fast. No. Right, and the saddle, as Brentley talked about when he was going over the components of the bicycle, the saddle was fantastic. Disco is detecting an intruder. What did you think about the saddle?
Yeah, I didn't experience any butt soreness, no saddle
Neither of us did.
issues,
Right.
none. I mean, on long days, your butt gets a little tired, but
yeah.
I never had any significant issues with my.
Right, starting up the next morning was never.
Super painful?
Never.
Yeah, it wasn't. No.
That didn't happen on the
No.
Apollo mission, but that was shorts related, not saddle related.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just love the way the bike rides. I really do believe that it is the best platform to build a touring bike for the kind of sort of road, gravel, adventure, trail riding stuff that we do. It's just so, everything about it is just so well balanced. Yeah.
Since we've gotten these bikes, we haven't even touched our road bikes. When we go out for bike rides here in Houston, we take these. We love them that much.
Yeah, and when we're out in Beverly, I doubt we ever put any other bike on Beverly, unless we're going to some specialized event or something. But these are such good all-around bikes, because when you take all the bags and stuff off, they're pretty quick. They're not road bike quick, but they're pretty quick, and they handle fantastic without all the bags on it. The handling's way different because you're not dealing with all the weight of the bags. They're very nimble when they're just a base bike. But yeah, they're just a great general purpose bike.
Yeah, we love them.
Yeah, we just love them. If you were hoping that we would have something bad to say about them,
We do.
Yeah, they're noisy.
The rear wheel is noisy.
It is noisy. We did replace. I mean, you do have to make it yours. Don't expect that you're going to unbox this bike and have it fit you perfectly. We fit these bikes. We paid for a professional fitting on the Apollos, and because the frame geometry is so similar, I was able to basically take those dimensions and replicate those dimensions onto the Gemini. And what I'm talking about is the saddle height, saddle position, front to back, saddle angle. I did replace the stock stem that came on the bike, on Mary Beth's bike, because she needed a higher rake, shorter stem. So I did get it to change her riding position to work. So you're likely, if you're going to use one for long distance touring, want to have it fit, and you should, you're going to end up changing the stem likely, and the saddle position and stuff. But once you do that,
those are easy changes.
It is super comfortable, and you should be doing that anyway. If you're riding your bike more than just to the bar and back, you really should have it fit. You should pay somebody. Your local bike shop can likely do it, but a professional fit is a game changer. One of the things that we've already had a few people ask about is the frame material. These are titanium. They make an aluminum one. So the question is the titanium worth it? It's about a $2,000 difference. So it's not insignificant by any stretch of the imagination. I think and they do have sales, and the pricing does change sometimes. But I believe the aluminum one is about $3,500, and the titanium version is $5,500. So it's a $2,000 difference. $5,500 is a lot of money. So is it worth it? I do not have a definitive answer to that, and I'm going to tell you why. And you can share your sort of your view of the Apollo versus this, because that's the only comparison we have in terms of frame geometries. The Apollos are aluminum, and these Geminis are titanium. But we kind of messed up that experiment, to be honest, because we didn't really ride these things before we put the Redshift seat post in, and I put the Redshift stem on, which changes the ride quality of the bike significantly. That's why you do it. So it's difficult for me to say that the titanium has a superior ride quality. I tell you what, it's got a great ride quality. Is it $2,000 better than the aluminum? That's tough to say, and that's really a personal choice. If $5,500 is above your budget, then get the aluminum one, because it's a fantastic bike, and you're not going to be sorry. If you can afford the titanium and you want to have a titanium bike, then get it. It's awesome. I have no I have no regrets getting the titanium bikes. There's a bit of a status coolness factor in having a titanium bike. It's really cool.
Yeah, it is. When we were sitting outside that brewery in Grand Haven at the Armory Brewery, I believe is the name of it.
In the social district.
In the social district, when we ordered the Domino's pizza, Brentley was inside ordering his beer, and I was sitting outside, and a gentleman went past on a bicycle, and he said, "Are those titanium?" And I said, "Yes, they are." It was pretty cool that somebody could just recognize that pedaling past.
In terms of materials, titanium, it's supposed to have the ride of steel and the weight of aluminum. If you've ever owned a steel bike, it has a great ride. Arguably the best ride for some people. I don't know, but that's the deal. So titanium's supposed to have a great ride, but also not be heavy. Steel's heavy. So for us, it's worked out just great. But I think frame material choice is it just comes down to your preference and your budget. But if you have any desire to own one, and and the $2,000 is something you can stomach, get the titanium for sure.
Yeah, I agree with Brentley. I don't have enough finesse to differentiate between my ride, even between the Gemini and my carbon fiber Giant. I don't detect a difference.
Oh, I can.
In ride.
Oh, I can.
I just don't have the finesse to do that.
That all carbon fiber road bike.
Well, I can feel it
is stiff,
nimble.
and
I can feel its lightness. I can feel the difference from the weight.
But you feel every bump, every pebble you go over just vibrates through the bike. For those of you who own an all carbon road bike, the ride sucks. You just have to admit it. The ride sucks, but it's fast, and they're easy to pedal.
Yeah, I just don't have enough finesse to detect those things. I just don't. Maybe because I have more cushion in my behind than you do.
No, I bet if we took these two bikes out and you went around the block on your Gemini and then on your road bike, you'd come back and you'd say, "Yeah, I get it."
I don't think so.
I do. Maybe we'll do that for a video. Let us know if you want to do that.
Yeah. If you have any questions that we didn't touch on, or questions about things we did touch on, please drop us a comment. We'd be happy to talk about it. We'd love to talk about our Geminis.
Yeah, and some of you already have. And I've been on the phone with several of you talking about our experience and giving you my recommendations, et cetera, et cetera. So we'd be happy to gab about these all you want.
Yeah.
And if you stumbled on this video because you're thinking about buying a Gemini,
reach out.
Yeah, reach out. But I would do it. Don't be on the fence. If you're looking for this kind of bike, and if you're looking for a gravel bike, this is a great gravel bike. But if you're looking to build a touring bike to do the kinds of touring that we do, yeah, I think the decision's over. I mean, I just can't, I just don't know of a bike that would work better for you because of the low maintenance, because of the gearing, because of the geometry. And hey, not to mention the support you're going to get from Priority. The Priority support people, if you have any issue, you're going to be taken care of. They have a WhatsApp group that the service people are looking at basically 24/7, it seems like. I mean, the people at Priority, it is a fantastic company. And the people that started it and the people that work there, they really just want you to have a good time on your bike, and they're going to go out of their way to make sure that that happens. And they don't want you messing around with trying to oil your chain and adjust your derailleur. That's why they make the bikes the way they do. They just want you to ride. And that really comes through. That design element comes through when you own one and you ride it long distance like we do. But hey, if you're going to build a touring bike, this is your answer. Yeah, I think your only decision at this point is titanium or aluminum. That's it, because this is the bike you need. Anyway, seriously, if you have any questions, let us know. But hey, thanks for watching. Appreciate it.
Enjoy the ride.
Wear a helmet.
Please.
Yes. See you next time.
Bye.